Another way that Huntress and SIEM is great is finding brute force attacks. So servers, devices get exposed for all sorts of reasons. A remote desktop server maybe is exposed because that's a way we used to try and help people get into the office, right? Well, there's still some of those out there. And when those devices are exposed through the firewall, the threat actors can scan the entire net, the entire internet. They have these tools to scan it to say, okay, what's there? And then they'll just do what's called a brute force attack. Just send authentications. Boom, boom, boom. Do any of these work? And like it's exposed, us sending you a note saying, hey, Chris, this exposed RDP server is gonna brute force. You're gonna be like, "Yeah, I know that. W that's like, it's raining. Okay, I need my umbrella. There's not much you can do about it."
Right.
Um, but what you can do what we do is we leverage our telemetry, and what happens on at Huntress is that we go and say, "Hey, the this IP address is an address a threat actor is coming from, is actually trying to break into multiple accounts across many of our different partners. And so we can see that address being used in an attack. And if we suddenly see that succeed somewhere, we can raise our hand and say, "Oh, hold on. Now that is definitely very weird. Chris, none of your clients, none of your prospects should be trying to log into multiple servers, multiple devices, you know, like that's weird." Just say it.
Yeah, it is. It is. Um, I did have a customer bring up one time, like, well, I have a password lockout or I have a lockout policy in place. So if they try too many times, they get locked out. Well, that works for usernames, but what we've seen is a shift in tactics well, I have a password that I'm pretty sure works. So if I cycle through all of your username, well, each username only gets dinged one time against the lockout policy. I
Yep.
just keep going. And so having a SIM in place to track that type of activity, and correlate it all is huge.
It's huge, and the threat actors are smart enough, they understand those lockouts, so you lock them out, they're like, "Oh, hold on, there's a lockout, we'll just slow down our attack." So,
Right.
like because most of those lockouts have a reset after X amount of time, and they'll be like, "Well, I got plenty of time." Bandwidth to them, computing resources are relatively free. Anyways,
Mm,
the other thing as a side note, like, if you look at what we have on a screen share here, the account that was compromised was called Xerox. So, like,
mm,
just free piece of advice to your prospects is, like, make sure your service accounts like a Xerox probably don't have ability to remote into other devices, like, right? They should just be used for maybe scanning only, um, if we're doing our Xerox or printing. Uh, yeah, and so, like, this is what would happen, and, we are able to say, "Yeah, hey, this got in, they tried to get in, and we were able to do this hunt for it." Um, and then SIM is definitely faster, like, having a SIM, we know is reliably faster in getting results because of things like that brute force, because we could see them as soon as they landed. And, when a nonprofit is getting logged into from a machine with one of these bad host names, um, you know, we can isolate that machine as soon as it happens. Once again, this is one of those, uh, cases where they have a machine called a user info who is able to remote into an environment. Um, but this happened as soon as it happened, we were able to log them out. I will tell you that I have seen cases on our soccer team where they were like, "Oh, if SIM had been in this environment, we would have caught that threat actor 5 days earlier." Um,
mm.
which is incredible, but it goes to the ecosystem of the criminal underworld that's there, and Chris, I don't know if you wanna talk a little bit about initial access brokers and how that whole part works and why SIM is
Yeah.
helpful. in there.
I can touch on that real fast. Yeah, absolutely. Really, that this underworld has gotten really patient. They've taken some cues from organized crime, in a more traditional sense, but they understand things like backup cycles. They understand your resiliency plans. They could be in the audience right now watching this presentation, but understanding that uh, I don't necessarily have to be the guy who exploits it. And so what we're seeing is initial access brokering becoming a more major issue where, um, listen, I'm just going to find a way in. And once I obtain these keys, either through compromising an individual in the organization to give me their credentials, or compromising them in any other way, and instead of me doing the break-in, I'm going to make my money by selling the keys to the house. And what we'll see is these sent out in large collections. We can find them, on the dark web, which again, a great job from the Huntress team and their threat research team that goes out onto the dark web, so I don't have to. But yeah, there's an entire business system there, and the best way for me to describe it, especially the business leaders, is these are folks who are competing for the same dollars that you're trying to collect. We've seen the level of sophistication in these organizations grow. They have recruiting programs, they have HR manuals, they have training. I saw one that was paying recruiting bonuses
Mhm.
out of Eastern Europe. So again, if you consider these folks an additional competitor in your business space, going after your dollars or the dollars that your clients could bring to you, it kind of changes and reframes the picture there.
Yeah, and it totally does reframe that picture because it you do need to understand, and it's some of what we talked about earlier about this why also those smaller businesses that become a target, right? That larger enterprises, a Fortune 500, Fortune 100, right? They have a large budget they can put towards their cybersecurity um, and put that investment in. And so those threat actors who have commissions that they are supposed to, they have numbers and quotas they're supposed to hit. They're going to move down to those smaller businesses as well, who they are hoping won't have as much technology protecting them and would become that victim that they can monetize for, a quote unquote smaller amount, maybe it's not $1,000,000, but you hit enough, singles in baseball, you're going to win a game, and that's what
Right.
they're trying to do, and that initial access broker is setting them up for all those singles. Definitely.